Hi, everybody. This is Valerie Probstfeld, and I am thrilled to have some members of the NICU community with me for a session that is very special and near and dear to my heart about the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, or otherwise known as the NICU. And I titled this panel From the NICU with Love, because I feel like that's so much of what started my motherhood journey. And my motherhood journey started in the NICU, and I am so grateful for all of the things that I had learned, all of the nurses that we encountered, and the experience, but the experience was hard. And I really feel like the more we support this community and advocate for the NICU, it's just so helpful for everyone, and to give back as well. So I am going to host 5 incredible people, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce your panel members here. So I have Rita Wadhwani. I'm going to pull her up here, and I'm going to click. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Sorry about that. Doing some technology troubleshooting. Okay, so Rita Wadhwani, she is an acute care nurse practitioner and a neonatal ICU clinical nurse specialist. She has a baccalaureate in biochemistry and master's in nursing from UCLA, where she graduated with honors, including being the first nurse recipient of the Outstanding Graduate Student Award. Rita has spent several years performing neonatal nursing nursing missions to her birthplace of Pune, India, where she developed a brand new NICU with the neonatal leaders at UCLA. After that, Rita worked as a NICU CNS on the teams that developed and opened the first private room NICU in Los Angeles County in 2010, and then moved on to develop the second private room NICU in Los Angeles County in 2018. In 2023, Rita had co-authored a manuscript with Amanda Williams, who is also part of our panel here today. And this manuscript is dedicated to holistic nursing interventions for neonatal and newborn nurses, where she encourages caregivers to view the delivery of care through the lens of the microbiome. And over the course of this 25-year history in nursing, Rita has cultivated several unique subspecialties, from adult acute care to neonatology, and now she's practicing functional integrative medicine. And she owns and operates iBiome Nursing, a nurse-led independent practice where she holistically manages chronic health conditions using microbiome science. Microbiome science. Tongue twister. Oh, I think you're on mute, Rita. Let me see if I can unmute you. Maybe do I need to unmute you here? Hold on 1 second, Rita.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. I think I had to do something on my end.
That was a mouthful. Thank you so much for having me. I got tired just listening to that.
Well, there you go. It's great. I love it. I love it.
So I've actually been out of the NICU for the last 2 years doing my nurse practitionering with functional and integrative medicine, but I really value the experiences I've had in the newborn ICU. I've been really privileged to work with those teams to develop those private room NICUs, and it's been quite an experience. And actually that's how I met Amanda, was in my role as a NICU CNS. So thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, Rita. Yeah. And Amanda, I'll just briefly, I'll do some brief bio so for time wise here. But Amanda, she is a neonatal clinical nurse specialist, and she is passionate as well as experienced in neonatal intensive care, nursing education, simulation, and quality improvement. In 2023, Amanda co-authored that manuscript we were talking about with Rita, again, dedicated to holistic nursing interventions for neonatal and newborn nurses, where she encourages caregivers to view the delivery of care through the lens of the microbiome. So thank you so much for being here, Amanda.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like you said, I love NICU. I love the families and the babies, and I'm so honored to be here to support them in any way that I can. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And Corey, I am so glad that you're here with us today. Corey is actually the host of 2 podcasts, as well as a NICU dad. And he is the host of the podcast Tales from the NICU, as well as Nonsense and Deep Thoughts. And Corey created Tales from the NICU last year through the inspiration of his daughter, Mila Pearl. This podcast helps NICU parents cope and know that they are not alone by sharing stories together. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm completely honored to be here because there are some incredible people here with us tonight. And me, I'm just a dad with a microphone. So I feel honored.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. And Jeff, I am so glad you're here as well. Jeff also hosts a podcast with his wife, so co-hosts Jeff and Jenna, and they co-host the Real Life of Parenting podcast. Through their incredible show, they share insights, tips, and tricks for navigating the roller coaster of parenthood. They are also NICU parents and draw from their own experiences to help listeners feel connected and reassured, because in the world of parenting, you're never alone.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm very entitled to be here. And as you can tell, Jenna's not here right now. She's away during the week. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus for the show, but she comes back on the weekend. Very excited to be here and talk.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, and tell Jenna we said hello.
I definitely will. I think she's listening.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great.
I hope
Hi,
so.
Jenna. And then Jodi, I'm going to text her to make sure she has the right link here. But when she comes on, I'll introduce her. But just a brief bio, Jodi Klaristenfeld is the founder of FLRRiSH, and she's a mom to a NICU baby. And she gave birth at 28 weeks due to a rare and life-threatening form of preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. And after her daughter's early birth, Jodi quickly discovered preemie parents aren't always given the support they need. She then created FLRRiSH, a platform offering NICU parent coaching, education, empowerment, support, and resources to help families navigate this beautiful and challenging journey. So I will text her to see if she can get on the right link here. But if we can get started with maybe Corey, I'm going to give you the stage for a second, if you don't mind being in the hot seat.
Not a problem.
Thank you. So can you share with us briefly about your NICU journey, whatever you'd like to share?
Okay. Well, when I was on the show with you, I know I had said that I would keep it short and sweet, and it ended up being a little bit longer than that. So I'll definitely do it this time. So last year, my wife ended up needing an emergency C-section at 33 weeks to deliver our baby girl, Mila. And Mila came out. She has Down syndrome. And the night that she was taken out, we discovered that she needed a surgery. She had tracheoesophageal fistula and needed the surgery to repair it on her throat, and ended up getting that surgery at 3 days old. So we ended up spending a total of 52 days, my apologies, 52 days in the NICU, which felt like 52 weeks. But the first 3 weeks I stayed down there in the Ronald McDonald House with my wife. And then the following 4 weeks or so, I was home and she was down there. So I would come down on the weekends. It's really crazy because the two of us had very different stories, you know, because we had different experiences. And when you go in, it's just, it's really intimidating. It's really scary. You're not sure what you should be doing. And really, you're just scared for your little one, and you just want to get out of there as fast as possible. You want everything to be okay. You know, you want to be able to go home and be a family. So, you know, I was already working on a podcast with my best friend. We called it Nonsense and Deep Thoughts, NDT podcast. We've been doing it for years. So while we were in the NICU, I decided to look around on Spotify and other platforms that I know that had different podcasts. And, you know, I thought to my wife, and I was like, you know, it would be really nice if we had a podcast where we could listen and see if anybody shared any stories about this, see what we can expect. And I couldn't find anything. So I came up with the idea to start something on my own. We only got about 10 episodes in because it really depends on whether or not people want to share. But that 10th episode is the story of our time down in the NICU ourselves. So, I mean, that one, it took a while for my wife to want to be able to share because she knew it would be really difficult. So 10th episode is ours. The first 9 are stories from others. There were people that sent in an email that explained their story, and I would read it out loud over the airwaves for everyone. And there were people that wanted to join and tell their story themselves. So, I mean, if you have your own NICU story and you want to share in hopes that somebody could learn from it or just share the experience, know they're not alone, you can definitely reach out to me at talesfromthenicu@yahoo.com, and we can get your story out there.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Short and sweet that time.
I love it. And thank you so much for just supporting the community. I think that's so important, right? I mean, what do y'all think as far as, I feel like the NICU community is just so special. And there's something like, I don't even know how to put it into words. Is that something that y'all kind of feel like as well?
I feel like for many, many families, they don't know the NICU exists until they land here.
Yeah.
And so to be able to hear from other families that you were in it and how hard and traumatic it was, but that you got out is really inspiring, and it can help people feel not alone. Because I'm not a parent, but I could imagine that it can feel very isolating and lonely. It's such an abnormal environment when you think of a brand new baby, right? That you're in this ICU with all these alarms and healthcare workers all around you. It's scary.
I can definitely attest to that. Like, own feeling scared, 100%.
It is. Sure. I don't know if you guys had seen, there's that Bluey episode, Early Baby. Yes. Yeah. And I really identified, my baby wasn't early, but just, you do have to be the bravest you've ever been. And it makes me emotional to even say that, because that's what we had to be. And Rita, Amanda, I mean, thank you so much for being there in the NICU, for helping us parents, because it was so hard. Amanda, I was telling Amanda that it's almost like nurses were translators a bit for us, of like, there's this scary environment and the nurses were there to translate what's going on, and just very thankful for that.
I think Jodi's here.
Oh, awesome. Hey, Jodi. Let me add you to the stage.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, Jodi had the wrong link. I was telling everyone on the live, I'm like, I think Jodi may be in the Zoom room. So I updated it to the live. So now she has the right link. So totally my fault. And I'm so glad she's here right now.
Hi, guys. Sorry about that. I was literally sitting like waiting. I go, well, maybe I have the wrong day, or I don't know.
I had introduced your awesome company, FLRRiSH. And can you talk with us a bit about what FLRRiSH is and a little bit about your NICU story, Jodi? I think it's just very special and would love for other people to know about it.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I created FLRRiSH basically out of what was missing from mine and my husband's NICU journey. We kind of landed in the NICU beyond unexpectedly. My husband was in Europe. I was 28 weeks, 4 days. He was on his last big business trip before our little one was supposed to arrive. And I started not to feel well a few days prior to having given birth. And on the morning that I gave birth, I started to see double. And to me, that was a sign of something was wrong. There was a whole bunch of other things. I had a lot of weight gain over like a 4 or 5 day period, which I thought was pregnancy catching up to me. I'd only gained 6.5 pounds in 28 weeks. So I thought that was that. I had a bloody nose. I thought it was cold. It was January. Your blood vessels expand, going in and out of heat, that could happen. So I explained that way. And I ended up on the morning that my daughter was, born, seeing double. And the night before, my pee had turned orange, which I now know is protein in my urine. And when I got to my OB's office at 12:30 that day, he took one look at me, took my blood pressure, and said that, banged on his sonogram machine and was like, "My sonogram machine isn't working. I think we need to go to the hospital and check out what's going on, check what's going on inside. And you might not leave until you have the baby." And I was really confused because I knew the baby wasn't supposed to come for another 3 months. And he's like, "Oh, everything's going to be fine." And he called, my mom was with me, thankfully. She came to visit to look at baby furniture and do that kind of stuff, not necessarily have the baby, obviously. And he said to her, "Well, you're going to go to the hospital." And he was almost like talking deliberately slow, but trying to send a message to my mom in some way. And we literally walked into the hospital at 1:00. She was born at 3:16, and I met her 3 days later. My husband came home from Europe and met her before I did. And, so we landed there completely unexpectedly. And through her 77-day journey and my 10-day journey as well in the hospital, I, first of all, just want to thank all the doctors and nurses on this panel with me, because you guys are the most special, angelic, superhuman beings that there are in the world. You make it possible for parents like me to go home at night when we really don't want to, but when we really have to. And you love on our children so much as if they are your own. So I can never say thank you enough for the love and the care that you give the littlest of babies in this world. But during that 77-day journey, and even after, my husband and I just felt so alone, confused, and we didn't know anyone else who had anything similar journey, or even a friend of a friend who had a similar journey. And there's such a big learning curve on top of going to nursing school without having enrolled by virtue of being in the NICU for so long. There's a whole host of other things that parents need to do when they leave the NICU that no one tells you about. And my impetus in creating FLRRiSH was to help parents navigate that gap between hospital and home, so that they have a place to go to get all the resources, so that they don't have to spend hours vetting therapists and resources, and they can know what might be typical and normal behaviors by listening to stories from other preemie parents as well as myself, and to just validate all those feelings and confusion that they are feeling in the days, weeks, months, and years even after their NICU journey. Because we all know the NICU journey doesn't end once you leave the hospital. I would venture to say that it is only just beginning and becoming that much more real after the NICU.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I completely relate to so much of the journey's just beginning. Like when you get home, where do you go? You have all of this stuff, and we were in the NICU for a week, and so not long compared to what a lot of the parents were in there for. And I was overwhelmed with all of that. And so I'm so glad that FLRRiSH exists, and I would love to continue to spread awareness of that, because it is so, so important to, I think, almost like you're bridging you're a bridge to almost like a sandbar, I guess, is kind of like the visual I'm trying to think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, because, right, I try and normalize, whether I talk to parents one-on-one coaching or group coaching, I try to really normalize their experience and validate what's going on, because most of what everyone is feeling or going through, or their issues, whether it be guilt or confusion or overwhelm, or just why did this even happen, any type of scenario, they're all so common, yet no one knows that they're so common. And I think by like being that friend that you never knew that you needed is really important, because then you can just reach out to someone at any time and say, hey, this is what's going on. And to have someone truly validate, who's been, I'll say, boots on the ground, so to speak, is really important. I really wish I had that. And that was also a really big impetus in creating FLRRiSH and watching my daughter grow and succeed, and knowing that all of those therapies and those early intervention specialists and were really pivotal in her growth and development, and finding my village in that way. And, you know, your village might look different than what you thought it was, or your parenting journey might look different than what you thought it was going to be, but that doesn't mean it can't be beautiful just the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Jodi. Now, Jeff, I want to give you an opportunity to share with us a bit about your NICU journey, whatever you'd like to share, and what started your mission for creating your podcast.
All right. I'll try to do a little bit of short form here, but so basically with us, was early with her pregnancy, so she was about 33 weeks. 33 or so. She ended up developing preeclampsia, and we went to the hospital, where basically she was, and Liam, he was in her belly at the time, obviously, but he started desatting, so they didn't like that, so they were like, well, we're gonna take him out. And kind of like the first experience, I had dropped Jen off at the hospital because I thought it'd be like one of those things where they keep her overnight and just monitor her. It happened pretty often pregnant. And then, from there, I was coming back with the car because I was going to drop some stuff. And she calls me and she's like, hey, where are you? Doctor wants to. And I'm like, what do you mean? So I got there and found it all this. And then Liam was born 33 weeks. He needed assistance with breathing. And we were in the NICU for about 3 months total. We were in for a fair bit of time, but there's definitely some people that had to stay a little longer. But during that time, we kind of felt shut off. It was around, we felt quite isolated. And really the only had was the people that were kind of around you. So there was one other family, really, the nurses that would kind of switch on and off. You need to see them like every other week, like that. And so getting through that kind of difficult for us, because not a lot of people that we knew could relate to us really about the problem. And so we ended up, years later, we decided that we would kind of share our story, and that in the finding people that would either resonate or feel similar, you can find like some sort of voice that is reassuring them, or at least they can do it so that they don't feel the aloneness that we kind of had. And then from there, we've just been using our podcast as a platform for allowing people their stories, whether NICU related or not, anything within the parenting spectrum. And we kind of just like to share the cold, hard truth about parenting. We don't really sugarcoat it. We do it, but we like to hear the actual story, and we like to hear all the things that maybe people can relate to down the road. That's the short or the quick of it there, but yeah, that's mostly our journey in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. And Jeff and Corey, I had the opportunity to talk with you guys about my NICU journey. And I feel like, well, there's so much of me. Well, today's a bit different because this is a new experience. I'm a bit like nervous with all of that stuff. I'm trying this new StreamYard app. But anyway, I usually have a very well scripted thing that I say. But when I have to talk about my NICU experience, it all just goes blank. Like, it's not, I don't know how to even talk about it. And it was so helpful to be able to talk with people who get it, you know, like people understand like what it means to feel these feelings, like it's a battlefield almost. And
there's a
and
big
Jodi,
difference.
It really is. Yeah. And I think that community cannot be understated. Like, it's so important to know that you're not alone.
Yeah, my wife and I have said on several occasions, it's like you don't really know unless you've been in there yourself. Because I've heard a couple of people, you know, when stories are told, you know, we'd say, oh, there are a couple of people that were there for just a few days. They're like, oh, well, that's nothing. That's no big deal. But when you're in there, you know that even 2 or 3 days in the NICU is a big deal. Like, we were in there for 52 days. That was the worst time of our life. But for someone else, those 3 days that they're in there can be the worst days of their life. Like, it's just a completely different feeling when that other person you're talking to has experienced it as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I tell people when, you know, you either have to leave the hospital without your baby or when you have to ask permission to hold your baby, that those are just such unnatural occurrences and something that you can't possibly understand unless you've been through it. And it makes no difference if you're there for a day or 100 days. The fact that your baby gets taken from you the minute you give birth, you know, in my case, I was knocked out and I had preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome, and I was hallucinating from the magnesium. Like, there were other things at play. So unbeknownst to me, me meeting her wasn't even a possibility. But for anyone, whenever your baby is taken away from you and you miss those first moments, then it's the hardest day ever.
Yeah, that's us with Jenna. She lost it because pretty much they took him out and they the other room, so she didn't even get to hear him scream or cry or anything like that. I know it played quite a bit of toll on her, and then even then, we'll see him. I didn't get to hold him. I got to touch his hand, kind of thing. That was about it.
Yeah,
and so it's it's a weird feeling.
Our girl got taken by helicopter that night to a hospital over an hour away from where we were, and they couldn't get that little flight box next to the bed for my wife to see her. I was able to reach in and touch her a little bit before she left, but I felt awful for my wife because she did not even get to, like, she got her thrown on her chest in the operating room, but she didn't get to touch her, hold her, see her really before she left on a helicopter. And that first time we were down there at the other hospital, when a helicopter flew in, life flight, my wife about dropped to her knees. Like that. It was like a moment of PTSD. Like, just the fear of that helicopter, knowing her baby was in it. It's crazy.
It definitely is. It's trauma that you guys go through and your baby is taken from you like that. And you guys are so brave to share stories. Like, I'm just listening in awe as the NICU nurse, to that. I'm so grateful that you guys are here to support our families as well.
Well, thank you. I actually think it's really cathartic and therapeutic from my own perspective, to talk about it. And I think that was, again, why the reason I wanted to coach other parents, in that helping them, I also help myself.
Yeah.
That just became an added bonus of doing what I'm doing. I didn't realize that that was going to come out of it. But, as preemie parents, we're forced to be brave and strong,
Mhm.
even when we don't want to be, but we
Mhm.
have to.
Mhm.
And, I feel so strongly to give back to the community, because I'll say, unfortunately, there are so many of us. And what's more is that there's nothing really out there that much for the parents.
Yeah.
We're the ones that are the caregivers for the children, and like, we just don't know what to do. There's no place to go. And since we're going to be in charge of those littles and their well-being, it's so important to me that people have resources and people have someone that they can talk to,
Mm-hmm.
that can truly understand what they're going through.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great what you guys are doing with regards to the podcast. I know, having worked as a NICU CNS for 16 years, it's actually a lot more. We've heard these stories before, and we hear the echoes of the emotional trauma that actually occurs to parents of NICU babies. But it becomes sometimes even challenging. I know I've hit some barriers to develop parent groups and things like that. And so I think these podcasts are where you have a platform and give a voice to other parents are super important. Sometimes even when you're in the moment. I don't know how useful it is. It almost may be more useful thereafter, post discharge, in the state that you guys are in now, to even be able to emotionally talk about it. And I think, Amanda can speak to this more. She's in the actual NICU now, but I think for me, trying to develop parent support groups and parent-led groups, it's so hard because I'll tell you, I've seen so many nurses advocate in ways that have, brought me to my knees with tears for parents, but you are just almost don't become the priority in certain instances. And I think it's great that you're giving people a platform to talk about that, because we also know that those types of emotional traumas do get stuck in the body until they're brought up to the service and not resolved. And so it's important to create that platform. I think a lot of parents would echo what you guys are saying. I've heard it before from parents in terms of that feeling of loneliness. You become encapsulated. I think someone said, like Amanda or someone said earlier, you don't know about the NICU until you actually have to go in and experience the NICU. The NICU is a really well protected entity within the hospital. It's almost like, hidden off, and it's true. You don't know about it until you experience it. And I think even other people who work in the hospital would say the same thing. And we purposefully almost isolate ourselves in a protective mode in the hospital. But I've never heard it said in that way from parents, where yes, it's very isolating. You're completely removed. Literally, there are locked doors between you and the outside world. And you don't get a lot of those normal things that nature offers in terms of bonding in every scenario. I think some NICU parents, and I would say more than from when I started in the NICU many, 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 many years ago, I think now it happens a lot more because your role as parents that advocated for more, but I think it gets advocated from you guys as well. And so I think it's great that you are creating this platform for other parents.
Thank you so much. Now, Rita and Amanda, I'd love to hear if you can share with us about the manuscript that you both co-authored, I think it's super interesting. Just to kind of share with other NICU parents and the community of the awareness of giving back, I guess, is kind of the best way I could say, like just what all the holistic interventions, it sounds like, are so important in becoming more of a thing now as opposed to years ago.
Definitely. And like Rita was saying, I think thankfully we have brought the family more and more to the baby in the NICU. I think we still have a lot of opportunity to do better, but certainly the holistic bundle that Rita and I talk about, one of the biggest things that we can offer the baby, because them being separated from you all, the parents, it's not only traumatic for you as parents, but it's also very abnormal for that baby and for their developing self. And one of the things that Rita and I get very nerdy about is the microbiome and the developing microbiome. We all know that we're an ecosystem that's a normal, all the things that live on and inside us. And that baby was supposed to be skin to skin with you all. And for whatever the reason was, they were sick. And thankfully, there are NICUs where we can take care of those babies, but that disrupts that nice bonding experience they're supposed to have. And it also disrupts that developing microbiome. So Rita and I really did a lot of research looking at the evidence that exists now, and it's growing constantly. It's really fascinating, and there's a lot of things from mom's milk that she's producing and the specific proteins that are inside it and how that develops the baby. But also one of the things that I get so excited about is skin to skin holding and kangaroo care. It's so good for the baby and their developing microbiome. And we just kind of went through this entire, we call it a bundle, because in healthcare, we bundle a lot of things together to improve the care and the outcomes of our babies. But those are just two examples of some of the things that we can do. And as nurses, we really work with families to help with those things, to help that baby's developing microbiome, but also that relationship between the parents and their baby.
Yeah, I mean, as we started getting deeper and deeper into the literature, we realized that, and we were really researching the gut microbiome in relation to newborn infants and premature babies, and specifically NICU babies. And as we were looking at it deeper and deeper, I mean, everything brought us back to the caregiver intervention with the baby, and not really what the doctor did, but what the nurse or the mom did, or the nurse or the caregiver or parent did, and how that actually affected even the microbiome of the baby, and how that affected, in some cases, immune outcomes and responses as well. So, you know, in 2008, 2009, a lot of literature came out about the microbiome, and literature tying mom's microbiome to baby's microbiome. There was a lot of literature that came out about sound and that effect on growth and development of the newborn and the NICU. And a lot of these private room NICUs started emerging, and these bay room NICUs started emerging, and that really was also supposed to promote the familial presence in the NICU. And all Amanda did and I did was take that literature, tie it to the newborn microbiome, and say, hey, all of these holistic interventions, like one of the ones Amanda mentioned already is skin to skin. Breastfeeding, we know already, but there were a few others that really were tied to the newborn microbiome. And the more you support the development of the newborn microbiome in a positive way, that actually has yielded positive short-term health outcomes for NICU infants, but also long-term health outcomes as they grow and develop. And so, yeah, I mean, we started it off just really wanting to talk about gut health in the NICU. We were looking at things like residuals and checking that, and stomach acid and the role of the newborn gut and the microbiome. But then as we got deeper and deeper, it just took its own life on, and it became a holistic bundle. And we realized a lot of these things are really caregiver interventions that are holistic. And those are the things that we need to sometimes protect in the NICU, because while we are thankful for all the technology and the pharmacology and all the specialists and all of those other things, there are still some holistic tenets that need to be protected in the newborn ICU infant. And a lot of those can just be managed by nurse or parent.
That's also interesting, Rita, Amanda. And I think that for me, when I was in the NICU, I remember, or my baby was in the NICU, but I remember that was the first conversation that the nurse had with me, or the NP, I think, had with me, of she's getting antibiotics. And I remember feeling like a bad mom, because I kind of knew all of that stuff of like, but what about the gut microbiome? And I didn't know much about it, but I did know a little bit where like, oh, and then there's the side effects. And it's just, I think it started this whole shame thing. And then like I saw them poking her and her pee smelled like antibiotics. And it was just, I hated it. And I got angry about it. So is there, I guess if we didn't get that experience, like with my baby, and I know we've talked about this in podcast episodes, but like, for example, with the microbiome or with anything else, like, I think there's just so much of this, like, oh, this didn't happen with my baby. So are we going to be okay? Like, is it going to be okay? And I think that's what's so, I guess, like exciting about the microbiome is it's always changing. These things are always changing. And also we're always changing. We're always growing. Like with FLRRiSH, there's so much that we're changing. And I think that I'm kind of going on a tangent with it, but I was just curious, like with my original question of like, is it okay if they don't get it right away? Like in my daughter's example, you know, like she rolls around with like my dog and all these things. I'm like, fix your microbiome here. Like, just roll around in some stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really loved about the holistic bundle that Rita and I put together was there's so many things that influence the microbiome. So, you know, some of the things that are big that we know is delivery. You know, baby is delivered by C-section and not vaginally. We know that that has an impact on the microbiome, but that doesn't mean it's the end all be all. Or diet. Maybe the baby needed formula. You know, that's not going to be the end, or antibiotics. All of those things, they're life-saving things that we have, and they're not the end for your baby's microbiome. So giving any breast milk that you can, holding the baby skin to skin, having that baby on you is really beneficial to their microbiome. There's so many things. And you talk about your child now playing with animals. We know that when we have pets in our house, that they have a more diverse microbiome. So the first 100 days of their life is very influential, but it doesn't mean that because that they were on antibiotics for, you know, a week of life, that their microbiome's destroyed, because it's not. It's an ongoing process. And Rita can really speak well to how our microbiome can be influenced as we grow older and as adults even. Like our microbiome isn't done for.
No. And a lot of, you know, I think the great thing about this conversation about the microbiome and all this new and emerging literature and it being really trendy and, you know, people asking the question about newborn probiotics and things like that. I think that it's brought to the surface the overuse of antibiotics in the NICU. And that's something I think, you know, both Amanda and I have been really intricately involved in both our subsequent NICUs in the past. But the conversation has evolved over time and people are more judicious now. Would you agree, Amanda, with the utilization of antibiotics? And I'll tell you, some of that also gets driven by parents asking the question, is this really necessary? And do we really need this? Because we do sometimes, even though we have all of this great technology technology and this great pharmacology, like we do sometimes practice from a state of fear. We have seen death and we have seen cases go awry and babies lose their lives over severe infections. And so I think I have seen providers with the fullest of hearts, you know, prescribe antibiotics out of fear. And so I think just asking the question and provoking the thought, and there's a lot of literature emerging now around the parent being a part of an active member of this NICU team, being able to engage those types of decisions and be a participant in making those decisions and asking those questions and being informed about the what the treatment plan is accordingly. I'm going off on a tangent, but to go back to your question, you know, I think that when we need antibiotics, they're life-saving. And are they an end-all be-all to the microbiome? I reiterate what Amanda says. No, there are ways that you can mitigate those risks, either even while in the NICU, which is what our paper talks about. You know, while you're actually in the NICU, there are holistic ways to mitigate some of those risks, and they're very simple. Some of them are very simple things, but I think just asking the question, and yes, those first 100 critical days are those 100 days are very critical, but you still have a lifetime of a developing microbiome. We know that profiles actually change after that first 100 days. And we also know that profiles change from up to the age of 3, from like about 1 to 2 to 3 years old. And then beyond that, you start building your adult microbiome profile. And that also evolves over time and has so many factors on it. So our paper says, you know, protect the newborn microbiome, because there are very simple things that we can do as nurses or parents and caregivers that can actually have an impact on that effect, even if your newborn has to have antibiotics. But almost especially if your newborn has antibiotics, you should be trying to mitigate those risks and doing some of these holistic interventions like skin to skin, and like using breast milk or even donor breast milk if breast milk is not an option.
I actually didn't even know donor breast milk existed until I was told that my daughter was getting fed with donor breast milk. I recently was profiled by a milk bank about my whole story and how it relates to donor breast milk. And again, it's one of those things, but like Amanda said, you don't know about the NICU until you go there. Again, I didn't know about donor milk until I needed it. I couldn't, I don't know whether I could produce milk or not, but because of the magnesium and everything else, and I wasn't pumping those first couple of days anyway. So I was happy to know she was getting milk, but I was so confused because I knew I wasn't making it. And I was like, but I'm so thankful again to those women who give of themselves selflessly so that kids like my daughter can get that. And also not even knowing that that's standard protocol, especially given her gestation at 28 and 4, that regardless, there's no choice. This is what is done, because babies do need all those nutrients. So, you know, I like I said, I didn't even know that existed, or that I could even pump and make milk, because I thought somehow, well, she's still supposed to be inside of me. How can I make milk if you know, she's still supposed to be in me? But the brain and the body, they talk to each other. And that was kind of remarkable to me. It was so this like confluence of outer body experiences and confusion, yet like wonderful at the same time, from a nature and nurture perspective on how the body works.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, but it's not standard in every hospital, and I think they're advocating for donor breast milk. in facilities that don't currently have it. Is that correct, Amanda?
That's correct. Yeah, it's not standard in every. I think more and more NICUs are having donor milk available, especially for the smallest of babies. But there's work to be done still, and to make sure that more babies can have it, and also to support moms to produce their milk too, because it's truly like a superpower. Just listening to you talk about not knowing that your body could do that, given that your baby was born early, made me think about how much of a superpower your body is, because your body knows the baby was born early, and therefore it actually produces milk that has more protein and more nutrients and actually specific antibodies based on the world around you. And it's amazing. So
I did ask those questions, because I'm like, why is it so yellow and thick? Like, I didn't know anything. I must have came off as someone who was like ignorant or something, but I just didn't know, because I didn't think about it, or never really thought that it was something. It wasn't on my radar. And then, I'm sure you know this from many NICU parents, we ended up having like an extra freezer full, especially because at first they take so little, but you're pumping a full like 8 to 10 ounces anyway. So, we had this stockpile of liquid gold, as they call it.
Yeah, everyone's running to Costco to get a giant freezer.
When we got sent home from the NICU, we could barely fit in our car because of all the milk we got sent home with. And I just want to say that's one thing it's one of the many things I'm very proud of my wife for, is when we did get home and we had all this extra milk, she was producing a lot and our baby wasn't using all of it, and we knew we wouldn't get to all of it. She found a really good group on Facebook where women were in need of breast milk for their babies, that they wanted that instead of formula. And she was able to donate to many, many families with what she was producing. So she made me really proud with that.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And, our paper really just talks about honoring these natural processes in the NICU, which tend to not be a priority and get drowned out. And I'm going to defend those people who drown them out a little bit, because they're saving lives, right? And so they have competing needs and competing priorities. But I think we just kind of wrote this in the effort to say, hey, there's still this natural, holistic element that actually is going to improve your outcomes in terms of infection prevention and so on and so forth. So you want to do these things because they'll help your clinical outcomes as well.
I also think that sometimes I might have benefited more from a cuddle session with my daughter, and my husband thinks that he did as well, maybe more than she did. I did on many occasions take my blood pressure before and after, and from I don't know if it's holistic, natural, or clinical perspective, and you guys could speak more to this, is that my blood pressure went down, markedly so. And that's just by having her on my skin. So for that reason, on top of loving, because to me, it felt like she was in the right place when she was on my chest, and it felt like she was at her home, that, from the medical perspective, I was, again, shocked how it also had benefits for me for what I was also going through.
It does. Yeah. So it's amazing, because we have learned there's so much evidence to support kangaroo care and skin to skin, and how good it is for baby, for all parents, moms, dads. It's so good. You release oxytocin in your brain, that love hormone, and that makes you feel less stress, and it brings down your cortisol level, which brings down your blood pressure, helps you produce more milk. It keeps baby warm, and also you synchronize with the baby. So mom or dad, whoever's holding, your heart rate and your breathing after about 10, 15 minutes, because that move from the bed to the chair can be stressful. And I think everyone's always afraid of that move. But once you settle in, you synchronize together, and they've done a lot of research, and babies do better when they can be held. The more they can be held, the better. And so we're always advocating. I'm always walking around my NICU like, can they be held skin to skin today? Get them held skin to skin today, because it's so good for the baby, but also you parents. It's a superpower, truly.
And it's a very simple thing.
It is. And Jeff, I know that we had talked on your podcast a bit about just like, we were talking about your dog and pet therapy a bit, and how you kind of had a similar, Jenna was saying like that helped her even like just to sleep with the dog sometimes. And which I thought was a really neat perspective.
Helps that he's a cuddle bug. He's next to me, but you can't right now. No, I think that helped both a bit. We did have the dog at home, and so one of us would stay at the hospital overnight, and so we'd always have the dog, or someone would have the dog. And I know she stressful times where she was definitely anxious all day, stressed, and coming home, just trying to, I guess is the best way to put it. And when you have the dog and you have something there that you can kind of just, like, I don't know how to explain it. You know, when you have your dog and they just come up to you, or they just want to cuddle with you, you're just happy.
It's like they know.
They're there to kind of support you. One thing I kind of want to touch on was like the hospital bed move, like when you're bed to chair. I don't think anyone outside understands that. You got about 50 different wires and tubes and everything coming up. You're trying to go 2 feet to the chair to sit down.
Yep.
Yeah. But
and it takes five different specialists, right, at the bed, making sure everything's okay.
Yeah. If the nurse would come by, and she would make sure she kind of makes like a little path for the wires all to go.
And sometimes tape with the wires to make sure it's just at the perfect angle.
I had that. I always had tape like on my, like especially initially, like in the first couple of weeks when my daughter was the smallest, I always had that. And I had like, I don't say like not a test tube, but like something. So in case there was any flow coming out, that could go out and into that. But yeah, I remember always, whenever they would take her out, I'd be so scared that like something would get knocked out, the alarms would go off, and then I'd be like, okay, now I'm not moving for the next 4 hours. Like everything in my power not to have to go to the bathroom or anything. Right. Because, and sometimes I'd leave like dripping in sweat, even though, just because I guess both of our body heat together, but do anything possible not to have to go to the bathroom and have to move the wires unnecessarily.
The worst would be sitting there and you hear the machine going off while you're just sitting, and you're like, uh-oh, I need to move.
Yeah, you become a machine watcher.
Yeah,
you're watching for those beeps. The wire that scared me the most was the PICC line. That one always made me so nervous.
Yeah. It should.
Yeah, I was always worried. I was worried about it moving, because when they explained it to me and they said that it's like up into like close to her heart, I was like, oh, that's scary. And one day we came back we went to the cafeteria for lunch or something, and we came back in, and we could tell her chest was a little bit swollen, and her PICC line had actually moved. It started to come out a little bit and made her swell up. So I was like, oh man, my worst fear now, something actually happened. So I was very wary of it from that point on.
My daughter, like we couldn't touch her feet for the longest time where her PICC line was. I don't know if that's, she was sensitive or thinking that something, because she had 2 blood transfusions, she needed them. So I don't know if it was her maybe thinking someone was doing something. And every time, we talk to her and tell her we're going to try and massage her feet and just, make her feel better. And she would really wince and like pull her feet away from us. And I felt so bad that she thought that I was like creating pain for her. And then it brought me back to like, well, was it so painful to have that there all day, every day? You know, I guess those things you just don't know. They're such unknowns.
Yeah, Alexandria says here that 2 a.m. phone call from the surgeon was frightening, wasn't it, Corey?
Yeah, it was almost 2 o'clock in the morning, and we got a phone call from the surgeon. And I'm on the edge of my bed. We had 2 twin beds in our room at the Ronald McDonald House, which, guys, if you can utilize the Ronald McDonald House, absolutely do. Utilize all things that are at your disposal there. That March of Dimes, anything you can use it. But I'm on the edge of my bed. She answered the phone. She's on the edge of the bed, and you could hear the doctor talking, everything that was going on. And then at the very end, the baby's okay. It's like, can you please start with that at 2 o'clock in the morning? Tell me the baby's okay. It's scary.
Anytime I call a family, that's usually my leading, because I feel like just seeing that number on your phone, that it's this, you know, NICU is calling. It's like, hey, it's Amanda. Baby's okay. Can I just ask her really quick?
Oh, bless you. Bless you for doing that.
Thank you so much. You know what's funny that you guys are talking about that? I have flashbacks. Now it's the school that calls me, but I think it's the NICU or the doctor or something. And it's just the school. It's okay. But isn't it funny how like your body really just retains those memories? And
there's a great book called The Body Remembers. And I forget who the author is, but talks about how emotional trauma really does continue to sit and live with you.
Yes. Is it Bezel van der Kolk? That one there? The Body Keeps Store. Yeah, it's and it's very, there's so much that I feel like we can touch base on. It is wrapping up as far as time goes. So I want to make sure I'm cognizant of everyone's time. So before we go, just if I can let you all just share where our listeners can find you and where they can access all your amazing resources, listen to your podcasts, and then I'll make sure when I post this that I put links to all of that as well. And we can start with I see Corey first on the screen, so we can start with you, Corey.
Okay. Well, if you guys have your own NICU story or CICU, anything of the sort, and you'd like to share with the world, and try to reach some people, you can reach out to me at talesfromthenicu@yahoo.com. You can find Tales from the NICU over on Spotify. You can check out my main show, NDT Podcast, at ndtpodcast.com. We're on Facebook, on YouTube, X, wherever you find us. We're pretty much all over the place. But that show's more of an adult variety show. We just kind of hang out and talk about a variety of different topics. But so the Tales from the NICU, basically over on Spotify. I think that's the main spot to find it.
And I have your link here. I think this is the correct link. Hopefully it is, but here, let me just pull it up here. Is that the one? Wow.
I'm not sure. It's whatever Spotify gave it.
Yeah,
but it's super easy to find.
Yeah.
I think it's the only one on there. Yeah.
Perfect.
And that really relies on people wanting to share their story. I would love to do a lot more stories, even getting doctors and nurses on the show to give a little bit of an insight into what goes on inside the NICU and some advice for parents and families. That would be wonderful.
It's awesome. Thank you so much. And Jeff, can you share with us?
Yeah. So we're the Real Life Parenting Podcast. It's myself and my wife, Jenna. I think she's listening on this. Basically, we talk about our parenting journey and all that stuff. We kind of a bit earlier. We love hearing from any sort of parents about any sort of trials and tribulations that they've been through, what kind of journey you've been on. Good, can be bad, can be everything in between. So we're on Spotify and on YouTube at the Real Life of Parenting. And Facebook is where we're kind of most active for our Facebook page is the Real Life Podcast. And that's pretty much it. We're going to be getting back into, I think, the next season of our show here shortly.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And Jodi?
Well, Corey or Jeff and Jenna and everyone, I would love to be a guest on your podcast. I was on Valerie's.
She's amazing.
I really love having conversation about just spreading awareness and helping parents navigate. I call the challenging and unique but beautiful, journey of parenthood. But people can find me online at any social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at FLRRiSH, FLRRiSH.com. And my website is FLRRiSH.com. And you can email me also, hello@FLRRiSH.com.
And Amanda?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Amanda's NICU Ed. It's largely kind of technical nursing education, but families are always welcome. So I love to have you all.
Thank you so much. And Rita?
Yeah, Amanda has a lot of NICU parents who follow her, and she really posts a lot of pearls in terms of NICU tips and tricks. So definitely check it out. And I'm working as an integrative nurse practitioner. I'm practicing functional medicine and using tools like GI mapping and gut microbiome testing to treat chronic health issues and concerns. And you can find me at holisticnp.net or at Instagram at Rita_holisticnp.
Thank you so much. Amanda, I did not get a chance to copy and paste yours here, but I will make sure I put your platform into the show notes or into the notes of the posting. And you guys, thank you again. This is just so helpful. It fills my cup up to talk with you all and to just share our experiences together and to promote advocacy for NICU families and to give back and to know that we're not alone and you all are amazing and our babies are amazing. And I'm so proud of you and so proud of all of our sweet babies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
All right.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Later.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks.
All right. Okay.